Hello, everybody. This is Kevin Sloan, Director of the University Rover Challenge. Glad to be back with you today. Unfortunately, we're not out in Utah at the URC finals this year, but we are glad that we're able to come to you through technology. So today, talking with a couple of the other judges, key staff members from URC, want to talk a little bit about URC from our perspective. So I'm glad to welcome Andrew Duncan and Graham Lau. I'll let them introduce themselves. Andrew?
I'm Andrew Duncan, Deputy Director of the URC. Over the years, I've filled an awful lot of positions, judging, helping, carrying stuff, whatever needs to be done. Graham?
Yeah, I'm Graham Lau. Many know me online as the Cosmobiologist. I'm the Director of Logistics for the URC. Over the years, a lot of our students, our teams have seen me picking things up and carrying them, driving ATVs across the desert, running really fast when I needed to for certain things, carrying gas tanks and food to our judges. I've been a judge in the past. I've done weigh-ins. I've been the guy flagging down cars at the road to get into the hab at MDRS. I've done a bunch of stuff for the URC, and it's been a journey and a pleasure to get to know all of our teams over the years.
I think a bunch of stuff might be an understatement. I think both of you have really been jack of all trades over the years. But yeah, most people think of Graham as just the hired muscle that we bring in to pick up all the heavy stuff and run it across the desert. Most people don't know that Graham, now Dr. Graham Lau, is a very accomplished astrobiologist and scientist, and Andrew, an electrical engineer. So a lot of esteemed colleagues among the judging panel. But thank you guys for taking a little bit of time to chat today. I know we should be in Utah this year. We're not there right now, but we're gonna make do. But URC it's been an amazing journey. Having been running this competition since we announced it in 2006, 2007 was our first year. Andrew, you were there in the first year.
I was.
Yeah, just
that was you and I, Heather. I can't remember the
Paul
names.
Graham, John Baranka, and
yeah,
it was a pretty Spartan crew out there. A few teams showing up, not knowing what they were getting themselves into. I don't think we knew what we were getting ourselves into in those early years.
How many teams did you guys have that first year? I can't recall.
So there were 4 teams that year, and wow. Yeah, it was a pretty slim crew. Of course, we had BYU, the only team to have competed every single year. They were second place that year, and University of Nevada, Reno. So they came in with a rover, and at that time there wasn't a wealth of competition videos up on YouTube for teams to see. So they had a plywood box frame, or not even plywood. I think it was particle board frame for their rover. So how many rovers are using wood for structural components today?
That's awesome.
But it was pretty amazing. And then Graham, do you remember when you came on board?
I can't quite. It was 2009 or 2010. I think it was 2010. My friend Ryan Kobrick, now Dr. Ryan Kobrick, he's a professor down at Embry-Riddle University in Florida. Kevin, Andrew, you guys know Ryan, of course. Ryan and I had both heard about it through Kevin, and then came out together from Colorado. We were both graduate students at the University of Colorado at the time, and drove out together to take part in the URC. And then I haven't been there every year since. I've missed a few, but I think that was 2010 where I first came out, maybe.
That sounds about right.
Yeah, and of course, Ryan Kobrick, he who does a lot of great spacesuit research now down at Embry-Riddle, he was there with me at Penn State when it was the Penn State Mars Society that came out as part of MDRS Crew 25 with a rover project, and that was really the genesis for what became URC. But it's great how all these circles come back together.
Yeah, but, all these connections we make through the Mars Society and through all these things we do. I first met Ryan. I was an intern at the NASA Academy at Ames Research Center in 2007, and Ryan was at another habitat for the Mars Society, the Flashline Mars Arctic Research Station up in the Arctic, and he did a telecon into our group at Ames, and that's how I first met him, and then later traveled with him to the URC.
Yeah. So from those early days, it's amazing to see how far the teams have come. What have been some of your observations over the years? Andrew, we'll start with you.
Oh, So the electronics have advanced a lot. A lot of early teams simply slapped a PC inside their chassis with some add-on boards to run the motors, and that had a lot of issues with temperature, vibration. So the teams have come a long way in building hardened electronics that can handle the heat, they can handle the vibration. Range has extended tremendously. Teams used to struggle just to get 100 meters of range out of their radio systems in the early days. Now, unless there's obstacles, I don't think we really have many teams that have radio problems once they're up and running.
Yeah, teams have been doing well, and yeah, once they get that initial connection, there haven't been too many issues. But yeah, it's amazing to see how much the industry has advanced to be able to support what a lot of teams are doing. You know, in the early 2000s, there certainly was not as strong of a marketplace for a lot of the electronics in particular. And if you think about the motor drivers and everything else that are really just off-the-shelf commodities now, you know, for a long time those didn't exist. But at the same time, seeing what the students have been able to do, most of the teams are running custom PC boards at this point, doing their own board print jobs. That's been pretty incredible and enabled a lot of things.
Yeah, excellent learning experience for them, getting a chance to actually build their own circuit boards, bring them up, see what that whole process entails. That'll be a valuable experience for them when they get out in industry.
Yeah, certainly. Now, Graham, coming from a little bit of a scientist background, how have you seen the science side of things evolving?
Yeah, I mean, so the science task has always been interesting to watch that grow. That's one task where, you know, the challenge isn't necessarily in just the engineering. The challenge is also for the students to think as scientists. You know, how would you collect a sample on Mars, given the constraints that our science judges have thrown at them? And so we've definitely thrown them some very hard tasks for science over the years, but it's always been interesting to see the students design around these challenges we give them for the sciences. And also just, I mean, the scientific knowledge in general of the teams has definitely improved over the years. It's been great to see the students, you know, some of whom don't really have a background necessarily in geology or chemistry or, you know, planetary science, to spend a lot of time really thinking about those things when they're designing for the science challenges and the competition. And so that's been really cool to see. Some teams have actually, you know, brought on their own geologists, you know, and their own biologists, but, you know, some teams are smaller and they don't have, you know, maybe students in their departments or at their schools who have that background. And so they have to learn that themselves. And it's been really cool to see these engineering students come out with a lot of knowledge about biology, about astrobiology, about how we would actually look for life, for biosignatures on Mars.
Yeah, that's a great perspective. And, you know, I come to URC as a systems engineer and bring a little bit of that mentality with me. And from systems engineering, when you think about how you manage a large project across its life cycle, it really starts with understanding who the stakeholders are and what the requirements are. And I think a lot of times it's easy for engineers to think about just how great the engineering project is in and of itself, but it's important to understand that you might have another user who is a key stakeholder in your project. And in the case of these rovers, a lot of times that'll be scientists that need to collect certain data in the field. And then how you take that stakeholder information, those inputs, and you're able to convert it into requirements. And so you end up with this nice relationship and balance between what the engineers can produce and deliver and what the scientists need in the field.
Yeah, it's very cool to see. I mean, and it's very relevant to our Mars research right now. You know, the reason we send rovers to Mars is because we have scientific questions and we want to find answers.
Yeah, certainly. Now, it's not just engineering and science. I think one of the things we always joke about is URC is a logistics competition with a little bit of robotics thrown in. Now, as our logistics guy for URC, what do you see from the teams and what's really required of them? And where did some of the successful teams differentiate themselves just with their ability to get through the logistics of the competition?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, teamwork, it's incredible. If you have a very good team leadership and very good teamwork and organizing the team and getting out there and actually working together, especially when problems pop up, because problems always pop up. There's always going to be something's going to happen that you didn't expect, and finding a way to work as a team through that is like the most important thing. And then on top of it, I mean, a lot of our teams are traveling in from all around the world. There's a lot going on for getting to the URC in the first place, for dealing with all the issues with travel, with shipping for your rover, for parts, and then getting lodging. There's so much that goes on logistically to actually make this all happen, to bring the teams out there in the first place. And as long as you have very good team leadership, very good teamwork, the teams seem to manage through that pretty well. But if you don't have that, we've seen some teams who start to fall apart because of it. You can't have teams who are yelling at each other and who aren't cooperating, especially when they're tired, they've been up all night, diagnostic, going through problems and things, trying to figure out what's going on, and then they're having issues with the hotel they're staying at, or with the rental vehicle they got to come out to the URC. There's so many things popping up along the way, let alone trying to manage this incredible competition.
Yeah, it certainly is no small feat just getting the team there, and even working through the process of ensuring that once they show up at the competition site, they're ready to go in a certain amount of time. And I don't know, Andrew, from the the standpoint of teams actually getting to the site each day, what are some of the challenges, and where you think some of the teams get it right?
Oh, like physically getting out to the site?
Yeah, because that's not an easy drive. Because some of the teams watching, I think there are probably some teams that haven't had a chance to attend the competition before, that haven't experienced just how bumpy the dirt road is to get out to the competition sites.
Well, you just got to remember, they've got a somewhat delicate piece of equipment in the back of their trailer, so you got to take that road slow and pay attention. There's a few blind turns, and there's usually always some nice big potholes and occasionally a giant sand pit. None of which is really easy to deal with if you haven't driven off-road before.
Yeah, certainly. And I think a lot of teams aren't necessarily thinking about vibration testing of their rovers. Certainly, if you look at the March 2020 rover, it's going to go through its own vibration testing. And that's something where you can understand the rocket is going to exert a certain number of Gs, and there's going to be a certain amount of vibration loading that happens during that launch, and as well as the descent landing process. But it's almost the same thing with URC, and I think a lot of first-time teams don't expect that. You go on the road and you have this delicate piece of hardware that you built in a lab, and you might have only done 1 or 2 disassemblies of it before you load to go to the competition. But each day you have to disassemble that vehicle, load it into a car, and then it goes through its own vibration test right before every single competition test, where it's going to be shaking and rattling around at the back of the car no matter how slow you drive. And then you get out to the competition site, and you have just a matter of minutes to put everything together and make sure it's working. And I think that's oftentimes we see teams struggling to chase down issues that can't figure out what the solution is. And I would say the number one contributing factor is just connectors. Connectors shake loose during that transit out to the competition site, and teams are trying to chase some other problem. They think there's an issue in the software, but there's a loose connector somewhere.
Yeah, choose your connectors wisely. If you can do shock and vibe, it's not necessarily an easy thing to test unless you have the facilities for it. But there's some options.
There have been so many times we've had teams who've told us that they have comms interference, when what it really was a connector.
Yes.
And I can't recount the number of times we've had that happen where teams were certain it was comms interference, and it was just like a loose connector somewhere.
Yep, it's the number one cause. And yeah, it's difficult to do kind of a traditional shock and vibe testing. And I think that's why we always encourage students to start thinking about a test and evaluation plan early, where your team is going through all the different types of testing. And it's something, the feedback from judges to teams during the different review milestones each year, we talk a lot about that. And where we see teams really excel is the teams that are able to start doing dress rehearsals early in the process. And that includes everything from actually disassembling the rover, putting it into the containers that you're going to use for shipment to URC, and how you're going to carry it in your vehicle at URC, and understanding which pieces have to come apart frequently. But break the rover down, load it into those different containers, put it in a car, go drive your car off-road. That's the most representative testing we can find. Get out, to wherever your test site is with a generator, deal with generator power, and make sure that, in 15 minutes you can slap everything together and get it working. Kind of the best test case there. Now, the one other thing that I'll mention when teams are putting their rovers together, if you were in the field and you were still compiling code, something went wrong. That's generally a bad idea. And I know I've seen that more than one time where the clock was running and the team was working on some changes to the actual source code and trying to compile things while the rover was running.
Yeah, that's problematic.
Yeah.
Yeah, your code should be finalized and locked in well before you're headed out to URC, hopefully.
Yeah, and there's a lot we see over the years. We've had some teams, now because of how many teams are registering up front and because of the full structure, that not all teams make it out to the event. A lot of our teams get there, they are ready to compete, they come out to the field, but we still have some teams who haven't gone through testing, who haven't really put their rover through the paces, nor have they really put their team through the paces. Like you're out in the desert, it's hot, you're in the sun all day long, people are sweaty, they get stressed. Putting your team through the paces is an important thing for our students to consider as well. So besides, taking your rover off-road and doing, your own shock testing and really testing the rover in any way you can that's relevant to being out there at the URC, I think also test your team. Make sure everyone can actually work together and understands that, what their role is compared to the rest of the team, what their other teammates' roles are as well. That's super important for the teams who are most successful.
Yeah, definitely. Making sure that everybody knows what their specific role is when the clock's running. I think that things just run a little bit smoother when teams have thought through that ahead of time.
Yeah, we've had a few times over the years, I think, where we had one competitor on a team wants to do every role, and so we see that person jumping around trying to do everything, and that really can hinder a team when that's happening, because you have to know what your role is in the team and stick with it.
Yeah, and in measuring organizational maturity, and there are different models that can be used. They're actually used in the professional world to measure organizational maturity as well as engineering process maturity. And CMMI is a famous one for that. But the lowest level of maturity is kind of informally referred to as the hero complex, where you've got a hero trying to do everything. And a lot of times you might get lucky once, but it's not a repeatable process. And then that actually is kind of a great segue into, we think about URC as a competition that happens 1 year at a time, but really the successful teams that we see coming back year over year are doing a great job building educational infrastructure where they can recruit new team members early on, and they can pass lessons learned down to the younger team members and make sure they've got the continued pipeline. Now, Andrew, you've certainly seen a lot of teams over the years. Where have you seen some teams really do it right in terms of ensuring long-term success?
Oh, usually a lot of it's in the leadership. If they have good leadership who are looking forward for where the next generation is going to come from, they have to remember that they're going to graduate eventually. So they need to be passing that torch on to someone else, have someone on deck who can take it over when they're done. I think one of our best early teams essentially disappeared from URC simply because they didn't have that next generation coming in. When their last member graduated, that was the end of the team. We haven't seen them in, I think, 10 years now. So yeah, bring in people, bring them up into the organization and groom them to take over when you move on.
Yeah, and Graham, you're certainly no stranger to the academic world and seeing students come through and train up and have to pass those lessons on to the next generation.
Yeah, I mean, it's important in your life to find mentorship, people who can share with you their knowledge and who can help you advance. And then when you get to a part in your career, even as an undergraduate student, as a graduate student, in your professional life, in a job for a firm, whatever you end up doing, when you have that chance to be a mentor, to share your knowledge with someone else, it's a crucial time for you to learn who you are and how you share your knowledge. And yeah, great leadership comes from those who know how to pass down their knowledge, who, as Andrew mentioned, look forward, who look to what the next generation can do. All of us, we all want to be Insta famous, nowadays with the internet and how things are, right? We all want our dances on TikTok to be the coolest. But it's, at the same time, like, that's a little self-serving. We should also think about the next generation. Think about just the lower class just below you and what you can do to advance them. And so for the URC, for the really good teams, as Andrew mentioned, they are the teams who do share that knowledge, who kind of have a plan for year after year, working together as a team through the whole process, through recruiting really good students from around the university who are really interested, who will be good teammates, who will be really involved through the whole process of designing, building the rover, and then the competition itself. And so yeah, having that ability to share your knowledge as a team, not just within your team during the year, but for the next year coming up, that's so crucial.
Yeah, now the unfortunate part, I don't know if you realize this, but I think the majority of our viewers have now jumped over and are searching for TikTok videos, cosmobiologists. So I hope you don't have anything up there that you're too embarrassed about.
Never. I'm all over the internet. You guys can find me if you want to.
Oh yeah, Graham's everywhere. But yeah, it's certainly easier to see with Graham. With the long beard, a little harder to see on my shorter beard here. But if you look closely, those gray hairs, that's actually wisdom coming out of the body.
Yeah.
So it's where the term graybeard comes from.
You can measure the number of URCs I've been to by how much gray there is in my beard now, from all the time I have to run across that desert to do something.
Exactly.
We've had some issues over the years, that there have been some, safety issues that I've been very concerned about over the years. In general, our teams come out, they're very safe. We do our best as the URC team to help, with all of our teams, to help the students maintain safety when they're, working in the field together. But it's one thing I look for, I do watch your teams when you're out there in the desert to make sure you are operating well together. Not just to be a good team and cooperate and be successful in the competition, but also make sure our teams are being safe. We had one year we had a small electrical fire. One of the students tried to grab the rover during that process and had a small burn on his hand. So if that happens, please don't touch the rover if there's a fire on board. We've had some other issues over the years. Nothing major, but enough to be concerned about. You're out in the desert. It's hot. People, don't really pay attention, and it's a competition, and people get really into it. And so safety is also super crucial to watch out for at the URC.
Yeah, without a doubt. And, I think one of the reasons why we're doing this video, one of the things that, among the judges we've been talking about is we're concerned that teams aren't competing this year in 2020. And so there will be a 2-year gap where teams haven't had the experience of being out to URC. And certainly there are new teams each year. But there's going to be less of that knowledge base that is able to carry over into the 2021 competition cycle. Because we're optimistic and planning for 2021, assuming that we'll be back out in the field. And I'm fairly confident that that'll be reality. But we really want to ensure that all this knowledge base, these lessons learned from the teams, are able to move forward. So within each of the teams, if you have graduating seniors that were able to attend as juniors or even as underclassmen, make sure that you're getting that knowledge from them, just their lessons learned. And it's not even necessarily the technical things about how to build a good rover. It's, hey, what can you expect when you travel out into the field? What are the safety issues? What are some of those logistics challenges to help get through? And certainly encourage teams to share any of the lessons learned that they have with the entire URC family across all the teams there. It's a great educational opportunity. I think one of my favorite parts of the competition every year is at the end of the competition, we bring all the teams together for a barbecue, and I think it's a chance for everyone to finally breathe, have a big sigh, bring all the rovers together, and you see teams going up and checking out each other's rover and really wanting to understand how the competition went, and just learning from each other. It's always great to see each year.
Yeah.
So
yeah, it's really cool. Just seeing how the teams, they are competitors. All of the teams, these are competitors. You want to win. You want to do a great job with your rover. But I love seeing the camaraderie between teams as well. when teams show up to a competition site and they have some extra time, and so they're talking to each other about how they designed for the competition, and and how the team is working. We've had teams who shared parts. We've had issues come up where a team needed something and another team had it, and they were very gracious and willing to share. And like you mentioned, Kevin, at the end of the competition, when the teams come together and relax and play together, and also learn from each other about how the event was, that's just really cool for us, as judges and staff to see.
Yeah, definitely. It's always great seeing the team spirit, and I think it always makes us kind of enthused and feeling a lot more excited about everything. The competition just makes you feel more optimistic in your life, seeing the enthusiasm of the students. So it's something we love to see from all the teams. I certainly hope that all the teams are getting through everything right now. I know a lot of students have been displaced, have been sent home, but eventually there'll come a time where everyone's able to get back to working on their rovers and start thinking and preparing for URC 2021. So we're excited for when we hit that point. So, hey, Andrew, Graham, thank you very much for taking a little bit of time, share some of your thoughts with the teams. To all the teams, thank you for taking the time to tune in. It certainly is an exciting day. We're hoping to see the NASA SpaceX Demo 2 launch a little bit later today, but this video will live on beyond that, so we'll know how that went later in the day if the weather holds out. But again, I'm Kevin Sloan, the University Rover Challenge. Want to thank everybody for tuning in, and we will see you all later.
Bye, all.